Sauron had fallen. The long war had finally come to an end. The dark armies of Mordor had scattered, and silence had fallen over the lands surrounding Mount Doom. But that night, Isildur could not sleep. He felt a strange heaviness within him, for that ring in his hand no longer felt like a trophy of victory. Night had fallen heavily across Mordor. The war was over. But the silence was not peaceful. The rocky ground surrounding Mount Doom still radiated heat. Thin smoke rose from shattered towers, while distant fires faded slowly into glowing red embers beneath the darkness. The wind carried ash, and within that ash lingered the scent of death. Isildur walked alone. His heavy armor was marked by battle. The edges of his cloak were burned, and the dried blood upon his hands had not yet been cleaned away. He looked like a man who had not slept for days. Perhaps he truly had not, because each time he closed his eyes, the same images returned. The fall of Sauron, the lifeless body of his father, Elrond, and the sound of the broken sword Narsil striking the stone. Slowly, Isildur came to a stop. Before him stretched the dark valleys of Mordor. Lands once ruled entirely by fear now stood silent beneath the night sky. But the silence did not feel like victory. It felt more like exhaustion. Slowly, Isildur raised his hand. Resting within his palm was the small golden ring. The ring the tiny circle cut from Sauron's hand at the end of the war. It still felt impossible that something so small could have caused so much death. Isildur stared at it for a long time. The ring glimmered softly within the darkness, as though it carried its own light. And somehow, holding it did not feel wrong. The thought disturbed him. He remembered Elrond's words, "It must be destroyed." But in that moment, Isildur did not wish to think about that, because another feeling remained inside him, quiet but powerful. He felt as though the ring now belonged to him. The wind rose once more. Ash swirled through the darkness. Isildur lifted his eyes toward the distant silhouette of Mount Doom. The war had been won. But that night, the battle beginning inside him had only just begun. The wind carried Mordor's ash throughout the long night. Isildur had stopped walking now. He sat alone among shattered black stones, listening to the silence left behind by war. Far away, small fires still burned across the ruined land. But even the sounds of the army camps seemed exhausted. The victory had been won, and yet no one truly looked at peace. Slowly, Isildur opened his hand. The ring still rested within his palm, small, perfect, and silent. But whenever he held it, he felt a strange warmth he could not explain, as though the ring itself were alive. Carefully, Isildur studied it. Reflections of distant firelight trembled across the gold surface. Within the darkness, it appeared strangely beautiful. It did not look dangerous. Instead, it looked precious. Slowly, Isildur's fingers moved around its smooth edge. Thousands had died for this small circle. Kings, soldiers, friends, brothers, and his father. The memory of Elendil falling returned once more to his mind. The weight of that moment still lived inside him. Isildur closed his eyes. He was tired, not only in body, but in mind as well. He had spent years fighting, years living beside fear, and now the war was finally over. Yet the ring made him feel something else entirely, as though the suffering had not been meaningless, as though all the pain was supposed to lead to something. The thought unsettled him, because the longer he stared at the ring, the more he realized he did not want to let it go. The feeling had begun quietly, softly, almost innocently, but it was growing. Isildur closed his hand tightly around the ring. For a long while, he sat there without speaking. Then quietly, Almost without realizing it, he whispered to himself, "My father should have seen this." The wind rose once more. Ash drifted through the darkness, and inside Isildur's closed hand, the ring continued glowing silently. As the night deepened, the skies above Mordor grew darker still. Ash continued drifting through the air, while distant fires faded slowly like red breaths within the darkness. The world itself seemed exhausted, and Isildur felt the same. Without releasing the ring from his hand, he continued walking among the black volcanic stones. His fingers tightened around the golden band instinctively, as though searching for the warmth inside it. Then a voice echoed within his mind. Elrond slowly, Isildur stopped walking. The memory returned once more. The red light inside Mount Doom, the roar of the lava, and the way Elrond had looked at him, cast it into the fire. The words still felt alive in his ears. Isildur closed his eyes. For a brief moment, he remembered truly considering it. In that instant, he had known destroying the ring was the right choice. But then, he had thought of his father, Elendil, a man who had spent his life fighting to protect his people, a man who had lost everything, and in the end, had died upon the stones of Mordor. Isildur's breathing grew heavier. This victory had not come without cost. Nothing had. He thought of his brother Anarion, the soldiers they had lost, the cities that had burned, and the last remnants of Numenor's people. Then, once again, his eyes drifted toward the ring. The small golden circle glimmered softly within the darkness, and slowly a thought began forming inside his mind. Perhaps he had earned it. Perhaps the ring now belonged to him as a prize of war. For his father, for his brother, for everything they had lost. When the thought first appeared, Isildur felt disturbed by it, because he knew it was wrong, and yet, letting go of the ring was beginning to feel wrong as well. That was the most frightening part. The ring was not commanding him. It was not shouting. It was not threatening him. It was simply using his grief, and though Isildur did not fully understand it yet, the ring had already begun settling quietly inside his mind. The winds of Mordor did not rest throughout the night. Ash drifted endlessly across the black volcanic stone, while the glow of distant fires painted the skies with deep crimson light. But Isildur's thoughts were no longer upon the battlefield. They had returned to the past. Slowly, he sat upon a broken stone. The ring still rested within his hand, and somehow, holding it made the memories feel more alive. Isildur closed his eyes. For a moment, he saw himself once again upon the shores of Numenor. The sound of the sea, the white towers, the tall, silent figure of his father Elendil standing beneath the wind. Back then, the world had still seemed young, and fear had not yet grown so large. Elendil had always appeared strong, quiet, but when you stood beside him, you felt safe. Isildur remembered the days when his father had taken him to the high walls overlooking the sea. Elendil would point toward the horizon and speak of ancient kings and forgotten lands. The strength of men is not only in their swords. He had spoken those words many years ago, but now, as Isildur remembered them, they brought him no comfort, because the ring in his hand seemed to whisper something different, as though true power really could exist inside a single object. Isildur opened his eyes. Dark Mordor stretched endlessly before him. His father was gone. Anarion was gone. The old world had fallen away. And suddenly, Isildur felt the full weight of his loneliness. He tightened his grip upon the ring. For a brief moment, its warmth felt comforting, as though after losing everything, this was the only thing left behind. The thought settled quietly into his mind, and slowly Isildur stopped seeing the ring merely as something taken from Sauron. He began seeing it as one of the last remaining pieces of his family. The wind rose once more. Far away, the fires inside Mount Doom trembled against the dark sky. But Isildur remained lost within the past, and the ring continued gathering his grief silently around itself. As the night deepened, Mordor grew quieter. The screams of battle had long since faded away. Only the sound of the wind and the distant crackling of dying fires remained. Within the army camps, soldiers slept. Some had collapsed onto the ground without even removing their armor. Exhaustion had finally claimed them all, but Isildur could not sleep. He walked alone beyond the edges of the camp. Black volcanic stones cracked softly beneath his boots. The air still carried warmth. The fires deep within Mount Doom continued breathing beneath the earth itself. Isildur stopped near the edge of a rocky cliff. Far away stretched the dark valleys of Mordor. These lands, once filled with terror, now stood silent beneath the night sky. But there was no peace inside him. Once again, he turned the ring slowly within his hand. The gold remained strangely warm against his fingers, and whenever he thought about letting it go, a quiet emptiness rose inside him. The feeling had begun frightening him, because now he was no longer simply looking at the ring. He wanted it near him. Slowly, Isildur sat down. His eyes felt heavy. His body carried the exhaustion of war, but his mind could not rest. Everything kept returning again and again. Sauron's final moment, Elrond's stare, the sight of Elendil falling, and then the ring again. Always the ring. Isildur lifted his eyes toward the dark sky above. Once he had been able to look at the stars and feel peace, but even the night itself seemed different now, heavier, narrower, as though the world had become smaller until only he and the ring remained. The wind rose once more. His cloak shifted softly behind him. Isildur closed his hand tightly around the ring and for the first time truly felt it. He did not want to lose it. As the thought echoed within his mind, his heart grew heavier, because he knew the feeling was wrong, and yet letting go of the ring was beginning to feel wrong as well, and Isildur could no longer tell which thoughts truly belonged to him. Throughout the night, the fires within Mount Doom continued burning without rest. Beneath the dark sky, crimson light rose from time to time while rivers of lava moved slowly through the black volcanic stone. Isildur walked alone. The army camp now lay far behind him. The sounds of soldiers had faded completely, leaving only the wind and the distant roar of fire. The ring still rested within his hand. At times, Isildur considered placing it into his pocket, but each time he held it again instead, as though it needed to remain within his sight. Eventually, he stopped near the edge of a steep volcanic slope. Below him, the fires of Mount Doom burned deep within the earth, endless, living, almost eternal. For a long while, Isildur stared into the fire. Elrond's words echoed once more inside his mind. Cast it into the fire. For a brief moment, the ring seemed heavier within his hand. Slowly, Isildur lifted it. The small golden circle glimmered softly between his fingers. Only a few more steps, and everything could finally end. The war could truly be over. The darkness could disappear forever. Isildur knew this, and yet no part of him wished to move. His feet felt heavy. His breathing slowed, and then another thought rose quietly inside him. Soft, but powerful. After all that has been lost, why destroy it? Isildur's eyes fixed upon the ring. He had fought for his father. He had fought for his people. He had bled, lost, suffered, and now, Was he truly expected to surrender the power within his hand? The thought slowly filled him. For the first time, destroying the ring felt wrong, as though he would be destroying a part of himself along with it. Isildur stepped backward once. Then again, the fires of Mount Doom still burned before him, but now he no longer moved toward them, because the ring no longer rested only within his hand. It had begun settling within his mind as well. The wind rose together with the drifting ash, and while tightening his grip upon the ring, Isildur quietly thought for the first time, perhaps it should be protected. The fires of Mount Doom continued lighting the night sky. Crimson light rose through thick black smoke, while the rocky valleys of Mordor still looked as though they were burning within the war itself. But the war truly was over, and Isildur could feel it. His exhaustion had moved beyond the limits of his body. It felt as though every burden he had carried for years had settled upon him all at once. Slowly, he sat down upon the black volcanic stone. The ring still rested within his hand, and now he no longer even thought about letting it go. The realization unsettled him, because only hours earlier he had stood near the fires of Mount Doom. He had truly considered destroying it, but now the idea almost seemed meaningless. Isildur lifted his eyes toward the distant battlefield. Broken banners drifted among the ash. Everywhere around him remained traces of war. Dead soldiers, shattered weapons, burned stone. And in the middle of all this, a single thought slowly began growing inside his mind. This victory had a cost. His father was dead. His brother was dead. The remnants of Numenor had spent years living beside fear, and now the ring in his hand was beginning to feel like the answer to all that suffering. When the thought first appeared, Isildur closed his eyes, because he knew it was dangerous. But at the same time, another voice quietly rose within him. Soft, reasonable, convincing. You earned this. The wind passed through the drifting ash. Isildur slowly turned the ring within his palm. The gold remained warm against his skin, and in that moment he realized something for the first time. He no longer saw the ring merely as power. He had begun seeing it as a reward, and with that thought, some of the guilt inside him began to fade, because now he no longer viewed himself as someone surrendering to temptation, but as someone carrying what rightfully belonged to him. That was the true power of the ring. It did not change people through fear. It changed them through justification. Isildur did not fully understand this yet, but the ring was already reshaping his thoughts in silence. And by the end of the night, Isildur no longer felt like someone who should destroy the ring. He felt like someone who was meant to protect it. As the final hours of night approached, the darkness above Mordor slowly began to thin. Far away, faint traces of grey light could be felt beyond the horizon. Dawn had not yet arrived, but the night no longer seemed endless. Isildur remained alone. The army camp now lay far behind him. Here there was only the sound of wind, drifting ash, and the deep, distant roar of Mount Doom. The ring rested within his hand, silent, warm, and strangely familiar. By now, Isildur no longer even attempted to set it aside. Holding it was beginning to feel natural. The realization disturbed him, because only hours earlier he had still considered destroying it, but now his thoughts had changed. Slowly, he stood and began walking through the dark volcanic valleys. Broken stones cracked softly beneath his boots. For a while, he listened only to his own thoughts. Then a sentence quietly appeared inside his mind, soft, almost innocent. I will protect it. Isildur stopped walking. His heart suddenly felt heavier, because he knew the thought was wrong. And yet immediately, his mind began creating reasons to defend it. The ring could fall into evil hands again. Others might try to use it. Perhaps he alone was strong enough to carry such a burden. Yes, perhaps this was not about possession. Perhaps it was responsibility. Isildur held tightly onto the thought, because it concealed the more frightening truth beneath it. He did not want to let the ring go. As the wind moved through the drifting ash, Isildur closed his eyes. He could feel something changing within him, but he still believed it was his own choice. That was the first lie, believing the ring was not changing him. In truth, the ring was not forcing him. It was doing something far more dangerous. It was using his own desires. And now the thoughts inside Isildur's mind were slowly beginning to merge together. Duty, grief, justification, and the desire to possess, all blending into the same darkness. Slowly, Isildur looked down at the ring. The golden circle glimmered softly beneath the pale light before dawn. And in that moment, protecting it no longer felt like an excuse. It felt like the truth. The first light of morning slowly spread across Mordor. The darkness had not fully faded yet. Smoke surrounding Mount Doom painted the skies grey, while ash drifted heavily through the wind. For a long while, Isildur walked in silence. The ring remained constantly within his hand now. Without realizing it, his fingers tightened around the gold, unwilling to lose its warmth. The thoughts that had grown throughout the night had finally become clear, and Isildur knew it. Slowly, he stopped walking. Before him, the fires of Mount Doom still burned. The same fire that once held the fate of the world now seemed strangely quiet. But for Isildur, that fire represented only one thing now. A choice, to let the ring go, or to carry it away with him. For a long time, he did nothing. The wind moved softly against his cloak, while his eyes remained fixed upon the ring. Then once more, Elrond's face returned to his memory, his silent stare, his warning, and the words spoken beside the fire. Destroy it. Isildur's breathing grew heavier. For a brief moment, he truly believed he could cast the ring into the fire. He could end the darkness forever. Sauron's shadow could disappear for all time. But then other thoughts rose within him. His father, everything he had lost, the long years of war, and after all of it, the one thing remaining in his hand, the ring. Isildur closed his eyes. The voice inside him had grown stronger now. This is my burden. I will protect it. I will carry it. The words were beginning to feel true. Because now, letting go of the ring no longer felt merely frightening. It felt impossible. Slowly, Isildur closed his hand around the ring, and in that moment, the choice was made, quietly, without anyone hearing it, perhaps without the world itself even noticing. Isildur would not destroy the ring. The wind rose around Mount Doom, ash spiraled through the dark skies, and for the first time, Isildur felt a strange peace in carrying the ring beside him. The peace was not real, but in that moment, it felt real enough. Morning had finally risen fully over Mordor. The darkness was retreating, and the ash-filled skies that had covered the land throughout the night were slowly beginning to clear. The fires of Mount Doom still burned in the distance, but now they felt like the fading memory of an old nightmare. Isildur walked onward. Behind him remained the ashes of war. Ahead of him stretched a long road, northward, toward home, and toward his fate. The ring remained beside him. By now, he no longer even tried to hide it. From time to time, his fingers instinctively touched the small golden circle, as though seeking comfort in its presence, and each time he touched it, the same quiet feeling rose within him, a false peace, but a powerful one. Isildur had begun to stop questioning it, because the choice had already been made. The ring would be protected, at least for now. As the wind moved his cloak behind him, Isildur turned for one final look toward Mordor. Far away, Mount Doom rose like a dark shadow beneath the morning sky. For a brief moment, Elrond's face returned once more to his memory. His silent warning, his uncertain expression, and the words he had spoken beside the fire. But now, even thinking about that moment felt distant to Isildur, as though the decision had belonged to someone else entirely, because the ring now made him feel different things, that he was no longer alone, that he was strong, that the burden he carried still had meaning. That was the most dangerous part of all. The ring did not bind people with chains. It gave them what they needed most. Isildur did not yet understand this, but the ring had already begun gathering his fears, his grief, and his loneliness around itself. The road ahead remained silent. Only the distant sound of rivers could be heard beyond the wind. And for a moment, Isildur thought about the future. The long roads ahead, the lost kingdoms, and the hope that one day peace might finally return. But fate had already begun moving quietly around him, because the ring did not choose its owner. It slowly shaped them. Isildur continued walking, and far away. The roads leading toward the Gladden fields waited silently for him.